Hello, dear Homepedia family. Many homeowners operate under the misconception that a fountain is merely a decorative centerpiece, a static object to be admired solely for its visual geometry. We reject this superficial categorization entirely. In the context of a Spanish-style courtyard, a water feature is not an ornament, it is an engine. It serves as the primary acoustic insulation and the thermal regulator of the home's outdoor heart. Without this active sonic intervention, the high walls of a courtyard act as a reverberation chamber, amplifying street noise and creating a stagnant, oppressive heat trap that repels rather than invites. The pain of a poorly designed courtyard is visceral. The space feels hollow, exposed, and paradoxically claustrophobic due to the unmodulated silence or intrusive external noise. We address this friction by positioning water as the resolution to environmental hostility. By introducing a continuous, calibrated soundscape, we mask the dissonance of the outside world, turning the enclosing walls from a prison into a sanctuary. Our design process begins here, not with the shape of the stone, but with the acoustic frequency required to transform a sweltering concrete box into a restorative, cooling oasis. We begin by acknowledging the inherent conflict of the enclosed courtyard. While it offers privacy, it frequently suffers from acoustic harshness and thermal stagnation. The walls that protect us from view also trap heat and bounce sound waves relentlessly. To resolve this, we do not simply install a fountain. We engineer a sonic anchor. We calculate the flow rate to drown out the specific frequency of urban hum without overwhelming conversation, creating a white noise barrier that renders the space psychologically secure. The visual component acts as the secondary resolution to the vastness of the pavers. An empty courtyard feels transitional, a place to walk through rather than inhabit. By centering a tiered fountain, we disrupt the axis of movement, forcing the inhabitant to slow down and navigate around the water. This physical friction is intentional. It transforms the courtyard from a corridor into a destination, grounding the eye and demanding a moment of pause in the daily routine. We often confront the issue of hard acoustics in Spanish courtyards, where stucco, stone, and tile create a relentless echo. To combat this auditory fatigue, we prioritize Cantera stone for the fountain structure itself. Unlike cast concrete, which reflects sound sharply, the porous nature of volcanic Cantera absorbs and softens the splash. This decision resolves the harshness, turning a noisy splatter into a deep, resonant murmur that soothes rather than agitates the nervous system. The spatial friction of a large, open courtyard can leave residents feeling exposed, even within their own walls. We resolve this agoraphobia by scaling the water feature to the volume of the space. A small bubbling pot is lost in a 20-foot atrium. Therefore, we implement multi-tiered structures that command vertical space. This draws the eye upward and centers the gravity of the room, providing a psychological anchor that makes the surrounding open space feel deliberate rather than empty. Conversely, in smaller, intimate courtyards, a central fountain can obstruct flow and create navigational friction. Here, we pivot to wall-mounted fountains. By embedding the water feature into the vertical plane, we resolve the spatial constraint while maintaining the sensory benefits. We utilize the wall itself as a resonator, allowing the water to cascade over zealage tiles, which adds a shimmering visual texture that creates depth without consuming square footage. We frequently encounter the problem of water splashing onto walkways, creating slip hazards and staining expensive terracotta pavers. To mitigate this functional failure, we design catchment basins with a precise overhang and internal splash guards. We engineer the drop distance, the gap between the spout and the water surface, to be minimal or interrupted by tiers. This resolves the mess while maintaining the sound, ensuring the courtyard remains a dry, usable living room. The aesthetic conflict of a new fountain in a rustic, Spanish colonial setting can break the immersion of the Hacienda aesthetic. We resolve this by sourcing materials that accept a patina rapidly. We avoid sealed surfaces in favor of raw limestone or copper that will oxidize and grow moss. This decision creates a sense of permanence, tricking the eye into believing the water feature has stood there for a century, effectively anchoring the home in a timeline of tradition. Lighting water features presents a unique challenge. Poor lighting flattens the water, making it invisible at night. We resolve this by submerging low-voltage LEDs within the basin itself, aiming them upward to catch the agitation of the bubbles. This transforms the water into a living sculpture of light and shadow after sunset. It resolves the black hole effect of a dark courtyard, turning the fountain into a lantern that illuminates the surrounding architecture. We also address the thermal discomfort of arid climates. A stagnant pool does little to cool the air. Therefore, we design for evaporation. By increasing the surface area of the water through multiple tiers and rough textures, we maximize the contact between water and air. This resolution creates a localized microclimate, dropping the ambient temperature by several degrees and turning the courtyard into a functional refuge during the midday heat. The sound of a pump humming is the enemy of tranquility. It disrupts the illusion of a natural spring. To eliminate this mechanical intrusion, we oversize the plumbing lines and isolate the pump in a subterranean vault or a sound-insulated utility closet. We treat the mechanics as an unseen hero, ensuring that the only audible frequency is the organic movement of water, preserving the purity of the sensory experience. We often face the challenge of integrating vegetation without clogging the filtration system. Our solution is to design raised planter beds integrated into the fountain's perimeter, separated by a weir. This allows us to frame the water with trailing rosemary or ferns, enhancing the biophilic connection while physically resolving the maintenance headache of organic debris entering the pump intake. A common friction point is the color palette. Blue water can look artificial against earth tones. We resolve this by tiling the interior of the basin with dark teal or cobalt talavera tiles. This depth of color absorbs light and gives the water a profound, jewel-like quality that complements the terracotta surroundings. It avoids the swimming pool aesthetic, keeping the vibe strictly elegant and architectural. In spaces where silence is too heavy, but a fountain is too loud, we utilize the weeping wall design. By forcing water to seep slowly down a textured stone face, we create a visual of moisture without the percussive sound of falling water. This resolves the need for a cooling visual in spaces intended for reading or meditation, where even a trickle might prove distracting. The transition between the indoor living space and the outdoor courtyard is critical. We blur this boundary by aligning the fountain on the central axis of the interior hallway. By positioning the water feature as the focal point of the interior view, we draw the eye outside, resolving the feeling of confinement and visually expanding the square footage of the home. Water conservation is a mandatory consideration in arid regions compatible with Spanish design. We resolve the guilt of water usage by designing recirculating systems with large underground reservoirs to minimize evaporation loss. We frame this decision not just as ecological responsibility, but as functional resilience, ensuring the feature can operate year-round, even during drought restrictions. When dealing with large blank stucco walls, the scale can feel overwhelming. We resolve this vertical monotony with a wall-mounted sprawling lion head or sun motif spout that acts as a sculptural relief. The water creates a vertical line of motion that breaks the static expanse, resolving the visual weight of the architecture with dynamic movement. The issue of debris leaves and dust is inevitable in open-air courtyards. We resolve this by designing skimmer edges or infinity overflows that naturally drift debris into a hidden catch basin. This design choice minimizes the visual clutter of floating leaves and resolves the maintenance friction, keeping the mirror-like surface pristine with minimal effort. Reflections are a powerful tool we harness to expand space. By placing the fountain in a shadowed corner, it reflects the sunlit walls opposite it. This resolves the gloom of darker areas in the courtyard, borrowing light from brighter zones and bouncing it into the shadows, balancing the overall luminosity of the space. We must address the clash between wrought iron and water. Iron rusts. We resolve this by using bronze or powder-coated aluminum that mimics the look of wrought iron for spouts and decorative grates. This maintains the Hacienda aesthetic of heavy metalwork without the inevitability of corrosion staining the stone, resolving the conflict between style and durability. The geometry of the fountain dictates the flow of the garden. A circular fountain resolves the angularity of a square courtyard, softening the hard corners. We use this contrasting geometry to introduce fluidity into a rigid architectural grid, balancing the masculine structure of the building with the feminine curvature of the water feature. In designs where the budget constrains the use of massive stone blocks, we pivot to concrete with a stucco finish, but we focus the budget on the touch points, the rim and the spout. By allocating resources to the areas of physical interaction, we resolve the budget conflict without compromising the perceived quality of the user experience. The sound of water must vary by time of day. We install variable speed pumps that can be lowered at night. This resolves the issue of noise pollution when the neighborhood is quiet, allowing the fountain to whisper in the evening while roaring to mask traffic during the bustling day. We consider the attraction of wildlife a benefit, but mosquitoes a plague. We resolve this by ensuring the water is constantly agitated. Mosquito larvae cannot survive in moving water. This biological resolution allows us to invite birds and dragonflies, add life to the courtyard, while actively repelling pests through fluid dynamics. Ultimately, the decision to install a water feature is a decision to curate time. We frame the fountain not as an object, but as a metronome. Its rhythmic sound slows the pulse of the environment. We resolve the frantic pace of modern life by physically constructing a space that operates on a slower, elemental frequency. The impact of these design resolutions extends far beyond the visual gratification of a pretty garden. By rigorously addressing the friction points of acoustics, thermodynamics, and spatial flow, we transform the courtyard from a passive architectural void into an active participant in the home's ecosystem. The water feature becomes the heartbeat of the hacienda, a constant, rhythmic presence that regulates not just the temperature of the air, but the temperament of the inhabitants. It creates a psychological boundary where the stress of the exterior world is washed away by the white noise of falling water. Our journey through stone, tile, and fluid dynamics proves that true luxury lies in the unseen details. It is found in the calibrated drop of a spout that prevents splashing, the choice of porous stone that softens a splash into a murmur, and the strategic evaporation that cools a midday breeze. These are the decisions that define the Spanish-style courtyard, not as a relic of the past, but as a sophisticated, living machine for tranquility. We do not just build fountains. We curate the very atmosphere in which life unfolds.